personalities. And if you can say something in a sweeter tone than what you set out to do, that would be safer. That would be much safer.
Or as always, you could befriend a lawyer. That might help if you're in the habit of putting out, statements on social media. Gentlemen, thank you so much for giving us your time. Both Prashant Bhushan and Sanjay Hegde, helping us understand what we can and cannot say as per the law in our country as far as contempt of court is concerned. But we have two comics joining us now. Rohan Chakrabarti is a cartoonist who creates green humor. And he's very popular across the country. And Apupen is a comic creator, the founder of Braindead India, or you could pronounce it Brain Dead India, you can pronounce it Braindead India, whichever you want to choose. Thank you both for joining us. Just to do a recap of what the two lawyers told us, and this is really important because this is what I was saying earlier. Now we're all self-publishers because we're using social media. This is what they said. You can criticize a particular judgment. And I remember, for example, when the courts decided that there would be an alcohol ban on the highways, and those highways ran through our cities, and many of our pubs and nightclubs were on those highways, and now there was a ban, and so they couldn't function anymore. There was a lot of criticism about that, saying it didn't really make sense, and it wouldn't really achieve what it set out to achieve. But attributing motives of any kind to the judge or the court is a problem for a layperson. Unless you have solid evidence of what you are saying, this is what Prashant Bhushan added. And also Sanjay Hegde is saying, argue principle, not personality. Argue, logic on the judgment and not on the individual. This is what they are saying. But coming back to both Rohan and Apupen, I want to ask you a completely different set of questions. Rohan, you first. Good evening. This is, I think, the first time you and I are speaking in person.
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah, we've been in touch for a very long time. I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
How difficult is it right now for someone like you? Are you being super careful, double-checking, triple-checking your stuff? Is it impeding your creativity?
I'll be honest, Faye, I think this whole crackdown on creative freedom for a person like me is, I view it more like the triggering of an evolutionary arms race. It's a contest between the satirist and the authority. And in the end, if you're a good satirist, you win. You try and figure out ways around the crackdown or the ban. So I think it's all, while it's scary, it's also an exciting challenge.
Exciting how?
Exciting in the sense that you have, so what is cartooning? It's a kind of illustration, and what is illustration at the end of the day? It's an exercise of solving problems, right? And that is what is the challenge for an artist. And if these authorities come up with bans or various laws inhibiting creativity of any kind, you face the challenge of trying to find a way around it. So that's what I mean by an exciting challenge. It's about solving problems, and it's always an exciting challenge for an artist who takes this up.
Apupen, same question for you. Do you find it now? Are you scared before you put stuff out? You're like, maybe not. Bad idea.
I'm not as popular as Rohan, so it's okay. Not many people see it.
None of us are as popular as Rohan.
I think it's also about how many people you reach and what kind of impact you have. It's part of what Rohan was saying also. I always think that satire is a kind of smart way to look at things, and we rely on a certain amount of intelligence for the satire and the humor to get through. And humor is very important for me also to put it in. And we've had cases where some of our posts did really surprisingly well, and we figured that the satire was lost and it was being shared by people who were not really supposed to share it. So that's probably a way of going around the system, but we might reach much lesser people when we do that.
No, but that argument I don't buy, because Sanitary Panels has 80,000 followers on Instagram. You have 99,000 followers. So you are
Oh, that's-
more popular than her. So that, that we don't reach enough people is not enough, because like I pointed out in the previous half hour, these are law students. Now, I'll tell you, as journalists, whenever we're looking for someone to do, hours and hours of research, we look for law students, because this is what they're really good at. Law students are now spending their free time finding somebody to complain about. They will find you. So are you, so actual size and reach is not really an argument here. Are you consulting your lawyer friend saying, hey, dude, can I put this out? Should I change it? Have you familiarized yourself with the laws? How are you making this work?
I just took my lawyer out for coffee the other day, so yeah, I'm working on it. Having said that, I wouldn't have used the word exciting had I been in Rachita's shoes right now. So
Yes.
yeah, I do have the privilege of not being noticed as much as Rachita at the moment.
So, Rohan, just to remind you guys, we're not using her name as far as possible, because we don't want, as a young woman, she's already, I'm assuming, getting a lot of trolling. So we're just going to call her sanitary panels for now. We've not used her photograph. We've not used her name. I really wish that other people in the media would do the same. As a woman in public life, I can tell you it's horrible. So if we can avoid her any of that pain, it would be great. But I want to talk to you about what the two lawyers were saying a little earlier. The fact that they said that there are rules to how this is done. Right? You can criticize the judgment, don't criticize the judge, don't attribute motives to the court. Is this something you familiarized yourself with, Rohan? When you're working, have you read through the laws? Because when you're in a newspaper, for example, you have an editor who sort of puts an eye on everything. But when you're functioning by yourself, how do you make that work?
So, Faye, most of my professional work actually happens with newspapers, and I am very used to the process of editing. And I think it's a very good thing for an artist to develop his or her portfolio and body of work, to be edited and to be under the supervision of an editor, just to know what works, what doesn't. So, see, this is something that R.K. Lakshman said very famously, that what is a cartoon? It's a reflection of the country's mood on that particular day. And that is what I think the job of a cartoonist is. It's not to enforce your opinion on your reader, but to reflect the country's mood on a particular day. So, in my opinion, the more indirectly, the more nuance a cartoon has, the more indirectly your opinion is presented, the more effective it is. And I think that's the approach I adopt in my work, or I at least try to. I may disagree with a certain hardline stance that sanitary panels has often taken in their work, but it doesn't mean that I would call for a ban, or I would call for a shadow on anything I disagree with.
Right. Abubakar, I'm going to share something on the screen that you put out. It's very interesting. They're hands together in front of the Supreme Court, and it says, "We don't want to be held in contempt of the Supreme Court." Is this, is this your tongue-in-cheek sort of, a lot of people are not going to get it humor?
Actually, this we shared all the solidarity posts on Braindead. It's just a platform I run with friends. So I have not seen this image actually, but Ria, my editor, has put it up, and we go with it. Yes. This was just, I think the idea is just to like show that all artists are kind of in the same soup over here, and I don't know how much rules we can really expect people to learn and do things. For our part, I have a fantasy angle to the whole thing. So we'll put. I talk of Rashtriya, a country where a superhero of power is running amok, and I try to focus it on power and how power can be misused using media, religion, all these things, state and corporate, everything. So to answer the earlier question, how to cover it or how to disguise it in a way, these are the ways you can take it. And I kind of buy it because the fantasy at times is very thinly veiled and you can see through it, but I'd rather like put it in the fantasy space, because now if I look at it in a reverse, I can think of the Lord of the Rings also and say that it's a fantasy take on what's happening in the country right now. Till now I never knew what the orc was thinking or anything, or how he would behave online. But now I know how, like, an orc can just repeat things and follow the supreme leader's voice and just be the orc, so I know how he behaves also now. So it's both ways, the fantasy and like how it reflects.
George, I was expecting to see you in the Rashtraman costume.
I think I should make it. It'll be the only
Yes.
way I can run with.
Yeah, that's the only way you can get away with a lot of stuff right now. But let's actually just focus on your advice at this point. And because you do a lot of stuff in solidarity with other artists, do you have advice for other cartoonists at this point, saying, listen, be a little careful, consult with someone before you put stuff out? Or are you saying, viva la resistance right now, let's just all go at it? What's the mood?
George, after you.
Abu Ben, go ahead. I was stopping you. Sorry.
I think it's you have to be a little clever about it with your art. That's the whole point. It's not really that the rules are so sacrosanct that we can go by it. Tomorrow it might change and become something else also, and we have to keep in track. So, like Rohan said earlier, the earlier books, the published books, went through very good editors who would really clear up stuff for me. So that generally these are, and when you read your contracts with like publishers, there are many things that we cover in that. I think there is a general responsibility to keep that and keep your territory free of these kind of things. And now it's a place where people are getting more and more sensitive, right? It's whose feet you're treading on becomes the question. Like you may not even expect it, but somebody who you expect support from might be offended with something also. But yeah, if it's about the humor and if it's about being clever with it, I go with it. I think there was a lot of satire that we grew up with in Kerala also, like even in mainstream movies, the satire was very on, and some like people might see it violent right now, but it was quite on, and that was what we came up with. And there was a lot of Mad Magazine making fun of things. What does that do? Like it punctures that balloon, that thing that you're floating, right? So it just makes it poof, and you just see it for what it is. Like I saw the Rambo cartoon in Mad. Till then I was a Rambo fan and everything, and they just took the pants off, and I was like, no, after that got through, right? So we demystify things, we bring it down, maybe like get a chance for people to look at it in a real way, because there's so much propaganda going on.
So I have a question for the both of you. I know that a lot of other artists, and we've seen this happen to OTT platforms, we've seen this happen to comedians, everybody, right? Everybody's getting heat right now for taking on the establishment. A lot of them are turning around and saying, you know what, let's do halka stuff. Let's talk about cricket. Let's talk about the weather. Let's talk about COVID. Let's talk about, Bagal wali auntie. Let's not do establishment, because who wants to die on that hill? Like, who wants to get into that kind of trouble? Did you also consider that? Rohan, you first? Did you say, you know what, let me just draw birds, which you're really good at, but why take on the establishment if it's going to bring in heat?
No, frankly, Faye, I was avoiding politicians for a while because I didn't find them pretty enough to be my subjects. But but then, the confluence of environmental matters and governance was just inevitable, and it's something that my work evolved into. Now, see, if I'm allowed, I'll take you back to a time in 1950 when K. Shankar Pillai, who was a legendary cartoonist, a predecessor to R.K. Lakshman, was starting out his publication Shankar's Weekly, and Jawaharlal Nehru had said to him quite famously, "Shankar, do not spare me." That was a kind of freedom given by the prime minister of this country to a cartoonist then. So I'm just wondering if we, as a base of readers, as this whole country, were a smarter base of readers in the 1950s compared to this, which is actually quite shameful.
That is true. It does seem like we're becoming more sensitive instead of becoming more open. Abu, if we consider, let's say, I mean, look at the track record, right? Just look back. There was the Tanishq ad that people got really prickly about. There was A Suitable Boy and a kiss that people got really upset about. I think we've gone, what was it, the 80s or the 90s when kisses would upset people? We've gone back to that. when, Bollywood would not show people kissing. There'd be like two flowers. Is that, where we want to be? And now we have this. Have we just generally become more prickly? And then it becomes a slippery slope for an artist, right? Because you don't know, like you said, you don't know who's going to take offense. Anything could offend anybody.
Back in school when we were given Shakespeare class, I think like 8th standard, 9th standard, there was the court jester, the bard who could make fun of the king. And in the beginning, I could not get it. Like, why is he allowed to like make fun of the king and everyone's laughing at the king? But, then that idea of humor and wit and why that word wit came in, and it just struck, and suddenly the Joker became my hero. Like, no, not the Batman Joker, but like, the funny guy, because it's a lot of the wit happening, right? And the king also has to be, well, kind of cool enough to like accept that,
Yeah.
okay, this joke's on me, but he's trying to make a point and it might be better for the country in general. I see we come at it from childhood stories, and it's not like Rohan and I are like thinking of like what science fiction conspiracy to take or something. It's like the childhood stories we listen to. When there is injustice, the hero acts, and usually the hero is like, you tell those stories to kids to imbibe certain values, right?
Yes.
And now you grow up and you say like, hey, those values are not cool. We should have like glorified the villain in place. Then we will be thinking like that, I'm sure. So story has a lot of potential and power, and that's why we tell kids these stories. And I think the general narrative is changing now. Like I think we'll have to slowly go back and change the stories we tell our kids. Like do a retake on all Jack and the Beanstalk and everything. Like the giant is the guy, something like that.
So yeah, don't upset the giant, Jack. Walk away. Put the pen down, Jack. Walk away slowly.
Better still, just sell the milk and come back home. Don't like go for the beans at all.
Don't be a hero, Rohan.
Advice for artists. I actually have an advice for readers. And I never imagined I'd be giving this advice to 70, 80, 90-year-old men. But I really would like them to learn to take a joke like adults.
Not to take the joke like a grown up. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us and for answering those questions. Of course, both of these guys have excellent work. You can check it out on Instagram and on their Twitter. Go find them. Awesome work. And some of it really hits home. And like we've been saying, as an audience, we seem to be getting more and more sensitive, or maybe there are parts of the audience that are looking for reasons to get sensitive about. We're better than that. We're more grown up than we were back in the 60s now. It's a more open world. We perhaps should open our minds a little better. Quick recap for those people who are going to use social media. Unlike what was happening in the 50s and the 60s, you now have access to mass media through your Twitter and your Instagram. You are publishing. Hence, you are liable to get into trouble for contempt of court and for defamation. What do you need to do specifically with contempt of court? You can question a particular logic of a judgment, not the judge himself, not the court. Cannot question the motives or attribute motives to a judge or the court unless you have solid proof, which really you'll only know if you have solid proof if you're consulting a lawyer. And if you're not willing to do all of this, then be a little careful of what you're putting out. At the end of the day, we must understand the laws of our country. There is no excuse for not reading the book. Everybody buy the book. This is my favorite book. Everybody buy a copy. Keep it in your house. It's always useful. It's really the holy book of this country, although we do get distracted on a regular basis as to which one the holy book really is. I will leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. And thanks to our audience for spending the last half hour with us. We will, of course, keep coming back every day at 8 o'clock with more conversations of things that are happening in our country that are of interest to us. Thanks for watching.